Everybody. This is Jackie Luqman.
And I'm Abdul-Shahid Luqman.
And welcome back to, I know what is a long-awaited new episode of Live in Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous show on social media.
That's right.
Anywhere.
Yep. On the planet.
That's right.
In the universe.
That's right.
The galaxy.
That's right.
The cosmos, perhaps.
Even in the multiverse.
More than one dimension?
The multiverse. Yep.
So we are certainly not going to pull any punches tonight, since it has been 2 months since we had a show.
Yep.
Yo, it's been really, really busy on this end. So we really thank y'all for hanging in with us. All of the live stuff that we have done from our church, from Plymouth, from outside events,
right?
Just all the stuff that we've done with the Real News Network.
Yep.
Just stuff is really going well.
Not bad for a couple of middle-aged kids, huh?
Not bad for a couple of middle-aged, not quite middle-class black folk living in the hood in D.C. Not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, listen, first, before we get into any of the topics that we're going to discuss tonight, we want to remind you that we are still seeking patrons. Listen, if you like what you see us do here in Luqman Nation, you should know that you can be a patron of Luqman Nation for as little as $3 a month, $5 a month, or $7 a month. That might not seem like a lot to you, but if we get 10 people to be a patron for Luqman Nation at $3 a month, that's $30. That is a subscription to a streaming service that we use to stream on 2 or 3 different platforms.
Exactly.
That takes care of one of our expenses to keep Luqman Nation going and growing. So please consider becoming a patron for Luqman Nation. Check us out on Patreon, where we will be providing some special content just for our patrons.
Yep.
We have been really bad at that. We're going to get better at that. We promise. Check us out on Patreon at Luqman Nation, LuqMannation. And as always, if you would like to give us a one-time a contribution just to help us out because you love us so much, thank you so much. We appreciate it. You can hit us up on PayPal, Luqman Nation, LuqMannation. All right. Obviously, today was a big old day in the media, media political world. Trump's press conference.
Oh God. Oh God. That train wreck.
we were late for church this morning because we were just sitting there this morning eating our oatmeal and drinking our coffee before church. Like, what? First of all, he spoke for over an hour.
Right.
That was the first issue. For those of you who don't know, your president, Donald J. Trump, held a press conference this morning where he announced that he had gotten, what's his name? Al-Baghdadi?
Abu Bakr.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Which he said, he called him, he said Baker. Something like that, you know. But yes, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Abu Bakr Abu Baker. I forgot he did say that.
Yeah, he said Baker, yeah.
That was just the beginning of the problems with this mess, this train wreck of a press conference. First of all, I think Trump said like 89 times in this hour and a half long, just verbal diarrhea fest that he had. He said so many times, you know, it's been 3 years and I just kept asking my top intelligence people, where's al-Baghdadi? Well, where's al-Baghdadi? Where is he? I want al-Baghdadi. He kept saying that.
Right.
And you said this morning, there's a reason he kept saying that particular thing that way. Why was that?
Well, you know, Trump's whole persona is, you know, he's all about marketing. Mm-hmm. You know, here's a guy who, throughout his career, even prior to being president, I mean, we've known Trump when he was this so-called real estate developer. You know, he was just one of those people that were in the news, and he's always been focused on his brand and pumping up Donald Trump, and you know, these things were necessary for him in the business world. These are traits that he took with him into politics. So Trump's whole thing is about branding. So he understands that his base is salivating for this type of stuff. So he's sitting up here saying that as if he was on it from job one,
from day one.
Yeah. So he said, well, they came in with this list of people they've killed, and I'm saying, okay, that's fine, but where's Baghdadi? You know, yeah, I'm glad that you killed these people, but where's Baghdadi? I don't see Baghdadi's name on here, and you know, so it makes it appear to the base that, you know, oh, you know, he was just focused on this one guy. He was just focused on this this ISIS leader who he mistakenly referred to as the founder of ISIS.
And this is how we knew that this whole, other than the fact that, you know, Trump's lips were moving, that's also how we knew he was lying through his teeth about he's been after al-Baghdadi the whole time. No, he hasn't. He didn't know who al-Baghdadi was. He didn't know. Donald Trump didn't know the difference between al-Baghdadi and a bag of groceries. He didn't.
Right.
If y'all think that man had any kind of clue, he actually said that he predicted in his book, one of his books that he read, he actually said this. If you read my book, I can't remember which name it was, I actually predicted 9/11, and I predicted that we were going to have a problem with Osama bin Laden, because, you know, he was saying very bad things about the United States. But we knew for sure that Trump was not telling the truth about being on al-Baghdadi since day one.
Right.
Was because he called him the founder and leader of ISIS.
Right, which we know that he wasn't. He was what they would refer to as you know, this Khalifa, or this leader. He was the one that was the face of the ISIL government, you know, per se, when they started taking over territory. Actually, the United States is the founder of ISIS.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be technical,
the United States is the founder of ISIS. And so, but even with another part of Brandon that I wanted to mention is the fact that if you notice his language, and Trump is all about again marketing. He kept saying we, and the whole time that he's talking about this. Yeah, and we went through this tunnel, and we landed on the ground, and in my mind, I'm seeing him jumping out of a plane with an automatic weapon with that bad toupee. Right. Running through the tunnel talking about, but where's Baghdadi? I want him. Where is he? You know, and you know, so here's a guy who never served in the military because of bone spurs. who just like a lot of rich kids, was able to avoid the draft during the Vietnam War era. And now all of a sudden he's Rambo. You know, he's talking about
Right.
we. I mean, you never heard any president when Obama announced that that Osama bin Laden was captured by the Navy SEALs. He gave all the credit to the Navy SEAls. He didn't talk about, yeah, we landed in Pakistan and we knew where he was and we crept up to the house and we immediately saw him in the dark and we started shooting. It's like no, it's like so again, it's this whole thing of language of attaching himself to this in order to present the image to his base that he's on the job.
Another thing he did, which it's all laughter and jokes when we think about Trump jumping out of a plane, because he absolutely did make it sound like he was right there with him.
Yeah, but now when you think of this, and because again, I can't help but see this in my mind. You said jumping out of a plane, and I'm just seeing him with this toupee flying up in the air, like he's just like.
The toupee is the parachute.
Right.
But another thing he did, all jokes aside, another thing he did that was absolutely despicable. We have a delay on our monitor, so we just saw ourselves doing it. It's kind of funny. But another thing Trump did, which was absolutely despicable. Now, I don't care who the so-called enemy is that the military, and I have to catch myself and not say things like our military and us and we, the United States. Look, these people don't represent me. They don't represent us in these pursuits of people around the world and this U.S. imperialism and their bloodlust of brown people whose countries they've bombed, and then they want to turn around and call these people terrorists because they have the nerve to fight back. But what he did was to stand in front of this podium for more than an hour and pretty much assassinate al-Baghdadi's character twice. Right. Like, he assassinated him twice. He killed him twice. Like, he kept talking about how, he died like a coward. He was whining. He was crying. They claim that al-Baghdadi detonated a suicide vest.
Right. They said,
in a tunnel when he knew that they were coming. I don't care what anybody says. That's not a cowardly act. People, these so-called patriotic people like to make it seem like killing yourself in the act of killing a bunch of other people is like this cowardly thing to do. I don't know about you, but as hard as this life is, I like it. So, I mean, it's to get to that point where you're willing to and please don't anybody go back and like, oh my God, the Luqmans were extolling the virtues of al-Baghdadi. No, we're challenging the language that these so-called patriotic Americans use to denigrate people who this country, this government, this military has terrorized. And I mean, this government have destroyed these people's countries, absolutely destroyed their countries, laid their economies to waste. These people don't have any kind of future outside of any kind of U.S. military and U.S. alliance interventionism. They don't have any control over their own resources. That's the last point we need to touch on before we move on to this other thing, to other issues. But Trump stood in front of these people this morning, all these people in the press, and talked about repeatedly, over and over again, about how al-Baghdadi was a coward. He was crying. He was whining. Oh, I wish I could show you the video, but I got a chance to see it. And he's a coward. He died like a coward. He said it over and over again. And he did that to assassinate this man, to kill him by killing his character. But he thinks he's doing that to discourage whatever followers. And he actually said that's why he was doing it. He wished he could show that video to al-Baghdadi's followers and the supporters of ISIS and ISIL so they could see how cowardly al-Baghdadi was. But that's not how those things usually work. That is not... You can't kill an ideology. You can kill a leader, but you cannot kill an ideology. And if you kill a leader and denigrate that leader to the people who already hate you because of what you've done to them, when you further show that you have no honor even in battle, I mean, there is even a code among on the battlefield, even between enemy combatants, that you don't show certain kinds of disrespect, even to your enemies in battle. But what does he know? He'd never been in combat, you know. But when you show people that you don't even give people the most basic human respect, and you denigrate them even in death, that just makes people hate you even more. So for Trump's base, they love this kind of talk because it's very John Wayne, you know, gunslinger going in, oh, you know, guns blazing and we killed the bad guy. But to the people in the countries that this government has been bombing, and the people that this government has been killing, they're not like discouraged. They're not looking at this government and what Trump said today and saying, oh, we need to leave the Americans alone. Ooh, we're scared of them. No, they hate our government even more. So, I mean, when you look at that, and then the issue with him talking about we need to keep the oil.
Well, let's go back again, because what we have to understand is the fact that you're right. There is, and this also shows that in his zeal to promote himself, he basically really created, probably I would say, more enemies for the United States. For example, he said that one of the things that he said, which was very, very disgusting, is when he talked about the DNA. And he said, well, we know it's him because we took pieces of him. You know, now, of course, I'm not the most eloquent guy around. I'm not the most eloquent guy when it comes to language. But when you're in the position that Trump is in, you have to understand that you're not just talking to your base. That here it is, you have the whole world listening to you. And that, yes, Baghdadi, and like you said, we're not supporters of his or even of the organization he represented, but there are people who are, and they are still armed. They're still out in the field. And let's look at this. ISIS had endured in the last couple of years the most brutal campaign against them, which involved the Russians, the United States, Turkey, the Kurds. I mean, they the Iraqi the new Iraqi army.
Right.
So I mean, and they lost all their territory, but they didn't pack up their stuff and go home.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They didn't just say, oh well, we lost our caliphate and or our territory, and they didn't just pack their stuff up and say, okay, well I guess we lost. You know, no, they didn't. So killing Baghdadi is not gonna. They even estimate there's still thousands of ISIS fighters still in the area. Now, again, one of the things that Trump was criticized for was that use of language. The fact that that what you don't want to do is have that type of disrespect for the person of anyone. And this is where like I said, in his zeal to promote himself, he has actually insulted many people who were probably were on our side at the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Who
Right.
probably were the ones who were responsible. See, the United States found Baghdadi not through all this technology they claim. They found Baghdadi because they spreaded a lot of money throughout the area.
Yeah, it wasn't because of the United States stellar and unsurpassed intelligence. No, it's because we like you said, we spread a whole lot of money in that region.
Yeah,
somebody's
bound to say, well, man, look, he's over there. You know what I mean? Look, I could use this $25,000.
Right.
He's over there. You didn't get that from me, but he's over there.
Right.
So technology still doesn't replace people that's on the ground.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is how they got him. But at the same time, there has to be responsibility in the way that we describe these things. Trump and his narcissism, it was his narcissism that fueled this rambling, discoherent press conference that he gave because he just can't rein himself in.
Oh my gosh. I want to believe that there was somebody on his staff, like off to the side, doing this,
and he wasn't looking at him.
or he was looking at him and he was just like,
right, exactly.
But it was really, it was just really horrendous, but I don't want to make it seem like Trump is like an anomaly in insulting people in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, in regard to who they say are our enemies. Because remember, our favorite Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, sat there and made a joke about Muammar Gaddafi and overthrowing Libya. We came, we saw, he died.
But this is the evil of white supremacy. See, and this is what we were trying. Well, this is one of the things that we cannot ignore, is the fact that this is what white supremacy. This is one of the characteristics of white supremacy, and it's this glorification. First of all, it's being drunk off the power. That's number one. And when I mean drunk off the power, I mean that's all Trump said is, we're going to get you. We're going this and we're going that. And basically presenting to the world that the United States is this omnipresent, omnipotent thing that you can't run, you can't hide. Basically saying that the United States in itself is God. And said, right, and we have you in our sights. And then so you see all of these religious tones when he said, and I remember I had said to you this morning, when he mentioned the names of the ISIS victims who were beheaded, and I just happened to recall a verse in Revelations, where which says that the blood of the martyrs that ran from under the throne cried out to the Lord and said, "When will you avenge us?"
And what have the white televangelists been saying on their televangelist shows for the past month? How specifically Christians, because their audience is a bunch of conservative Christians, telling Christians, if you don't vote for Trump, if you don't support Trump, God will judge you. Paula White just said that.
Right.
Paula White, who has preached I'm going to say it, who has preached at First Baptist Church of Glenarden here in the Maryland, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area quite a few times. They better not invite her back again. If she do, we might need to organize some kind of, because that kind of garbage, it is white supremacy masked under the guise of Christianity, but it's that white Republican Jesus Christianity that they are
the type of Jesus who wouldn't have turned over the tables of the money changers.
Right. Their Jesus is the one who would have gone in and invited the money changers into a secret room in the synagogue and said, "Okay, how can we work this out so that we can all benefit?" That's their Jesus. Our Jesus is the brown dude with the whip going in there wrecking stuff, telling folks to get the heck out and stop ripping my people off. So it is this white supremacist Christianity that is recognizing what you said a few weeks ago, that Donald Trump is the white supremacist Messiah. He is the white supremacist Messiah. And this press conference today, when this dude said a few weeks ago, "I defeated ISIS," people were laughing at him. And what did we say then? We kept telling people before 2016, don't underestimate this man. Not because he's necessarily intelligent, but because, like you say, he's like a trapped rat.
Yeah, he's like, and see, one of Trump's strengths is the fact that he is unconventional. See, now Obama and everyone else who understands the game of the way Washington, the way that Washington plays this game, they follow this script to a certain extent. They follow this script that's given to them from the oligarchy elite that says, which Trump is a part of that, but they said the oligarchy elite that says that, okay, This is how you basically conduct yourself in the maneuverings of Washington. Trump comes along, and what really makes the professional politicians so angry with him is that he is unconventional. The fact that even some of his closest allies, like Lindsey Graham and them, were upset with him because he pulled the troops from these territories that allowed Turkey to come in. Mm-hmm. So so you have Lindsey Graham and all these ones, which Trump was correct in saying that they just want war because it's profitable. See, one of the things that we have to understand is that we have to not dismiss everything that Trump says. What I'm saying is the fact Obama did the same thing, but Obama smiled at us.
Right.
And Obama sang out green.
And he was more eloquent. He was classier.
Yeah. He was, he was basically sprinkling sugar on on doo-doo. You know what I mean? And try to make it some kind of make it palatable.
It's pudding.
Yeah, palatable to us in some extent. But Trump, in his bumbling, unconventional way, is basically really exposing, and I think that that's what the elites really have a problem with him about, is that he's eventually exposing, without no filter, the way that they conduct business, mm-hmm. the brutality, the brutal way in which they conduct business behind the scenes. You would never have heard Obama or even Bush, as bumbling as he was, you would have never heard them outright say, yeah, why can't we just take the oil? We just need to take the oil.
Exactly.
And then we need to sit down and we need to negotiate on how, some people might want the oil, but they got to go through us.
Right.
You would have never heard Obama say that.
No.
But what happened is Obama and them would have gave all of the pretenses. Obama and them would have presented the this illusion mm-hmm. that somehow they're not interested in the oil.
Right.
Where in actuality they didn't already cut deals with Exxon and BP and all these other Western oil companies. Mm-hmm. But even Cheney, as evil as he is, he never came out.
They're all just like, shh, right. Don't mention that we're in there for the oil.
I mean, even as the Dark Lord Cheney himself, he didn't get on there and say, wow, we're in Iraq and we're just going to just take the oil and do this. So Trump is basically exposing. Now, the thing of it is, now that information is out there and that Trump has done all of this, how is that going to affect the political landscape here? I feel that, leaving his base aside, which, they love all of this, mm-hmm. and they saying, we should take the oil and stuff. But how does that affect, which I think it further erodes America's reputation on the world stage? Because, like I said, you're not just talking to your base. The rest of the nations are looking and say, oh, wow, how, or as my good friend Greta would say, how dare you? How dare you? It's like to sit up there and basically announce to the whole world that, yes, we're just going to take their stuff.
I mean, this man sat up there and just flat out said that the United States, a third party, a nation to whom the land does not belong, are going to proceed into this region in Syria and secure a resource that belongs to this land that does not belong to the United States, and people who might want this resource that doesn't belong to us are going to have to negotiate with the United States. He said that more than once, and not one of the reporters in that room challenged him on it. Now, I think later on in the analysis, when they were analyzing the press conference afterward, different media outlets, I think they mentioned, a couple of analysts did mention that. But in that room, none of the reporters in that room stopped and said, hold on, Mr. President, how do we have any right or claim to oil in Syria? What do the Syrians have to say about their oil? Isn't it their oil? Well, how about the Kurds? Don't you think they have some claim to that oil too? How are we secure? Nobody asked that question.
No.
But see, white supremacy sets the narrative. And people who, whether wittingly or unwittingly, uphold white supremacy, they uphold the narrative. A lot of times they uphold the narrative by not challenging it.
Well, and also, come on, it's about them having access to power.
Right.
You know, see,
right.
so so again, because this is not a democracy, it's just a democracy, on paper. The fact that the president could say, well, I don't like your question, but I don't want you back.
Right, and actually kick the reporter out of the.
So so what happens is that these reporters, they want to maintain access to. I've always was, I never liked the way that these presidents, no matter who they were, how they would just call these reporters' names out. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Marsha, you go ahead, Marsha.
It's like, is that your personal friend?
Well, the thing of it is that the press is supposed to, you should, no, government should not be that friendly with the press.
Right.
The press should always keep. Well, at least that's what the intentions were for free press. A free press is supposed to keep these people in power on their toes, not acquiesce to it, not sit up there and let them say, okay, go ahead, John, go ahead. And so what happens is that the media, we can't rely on them because they want to maintain, like we said before, the way that the press was responding to Donald Trump remind me of Al Capone, and it reminds me of the movie that Robert De Niro played,
Elliot Ness and The Untouchables.
The Untouchables. And so when Al Capone, when Elliot Ness did the first raid, and the media wanted this, now here Al Capone controls Chicago. Everybody's afraid of him. And so they say, so Al, what did you think about the raid? Hey, if you stole from me, I'm going to say you stole.
right. That's the media laughing at and enjoying, basking in the revelry.
There you go. Exactly.
And the bigger than life personality of this criminal murderer, mass murderer, Al Capone. But they hanging on every word and writing every. That's what the media is doing with Trump right now.
Yep.
That's what they did in 2015. When they covered his campaign, that's how they gave him all that free press.
Yep.
Every wackadoodle thing he said, they were behind him. Oh my God! I can't believe it! And they wrote it, and they ran with it, and they printed it, and they broadcast it, and then they turned around and wondered, oh my God, how did people take him seriously? Really? But that is how white supremacy has so many different facets to it, that we don't understand that it's not just like, the backwoods toothless hicks in the Klan robes. We're talking about systemic, entrenched, established power pulling the strings, not even in the shadows or in the background. They're not doing any of this stuff in secret. And they don't really care who their messiah is, as long as that person can hold the position of power for the system of white supremacy. Believe me, like we were talking to, and we'll move on to the next subject. The GOP didn't want Donald Trump as the leader of their party. They were unpleasantly surprised when they realized he was polling above all the other Republicans. They really wanted Mike Pence, which is why, again, we're going to have to do another show on this, why we need to be real careful about celebrating this impeachment stuff. I'm not saying the man shouldn't be impeached. I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for. Because Mike Pence, if you think Trump is accidentally stumbling into horrible stuff, then please be informed that Mike Pence will intentionally do much, much worse. Because see, the GOP wanted Pence. But Pence doesn't have Mike Pence has the personality of this sheet of paper. I mean, really. He could not carry a national presidential campaign to get people excited to vote for him. So they were hoping that Mitt Romney would step in, because Mitt Romney is a likable guy. But he didn't garner the kind of excitement from the Republican base that Donald Trump is. And all they were concerned about was winning the White House. So at that point, they didn't care who it was. They're like, fine, we'll hold our nose and take Trump. All right.
Yeah, and then Trump also benefited from the fact that there was a backlash not only against having a black president, but there was also a backlash from the white working class that these establishment people, because it wasn't so much Trump as it was the fact that people on both sides, on the left and the right, which is why Bernie Sanders became so popular. People were tired of politics as usual.
Yep.
And so they felt like we needed somebody to shake Washington up. Many of us backed Sanders to do that, and others on the right, Donald Trump, because remember the whole thing was that Donald Trump not only had the disenfranchised white working class behind him, he also had the talk radio show hosts who were savvy enough to see which way the winds were blowing.
Right.
And so they jumped behind this wave of this anti-establishment wave, whether it was Limbaugh or Mark Levin or a host of them who really are millionaires themselves, who could care less about the poor white working class. But they seen where the winds were blowing, and they were like, this guy Trump got something here. So like anything else, they put their finger in the wind and said, we need to back this guy Trump, because they seen that the people were tired of the established, what they would call the establishment politicians.
Right.
And so Trump came in there, and Trump, again, all marketing. So he understood it, and he understood that when he even in his language, even in the way that he presents himself, he understood that this was all a show.
Yep.
This is all a show. And because we've been so dumbed down as a country, the show was all they needed.
People keep talking about bread and circus. What do you think this all is? What do you think this all is to somebody like Donald Trump? That's exactly what it is to him. He just knows how to play. He just knows how to move the actors around better than you do. That's all. That's really. So in talking about actors and moving them around in bread and circus and challenging the establishment, and how not challenging the establishment on both sides benefits white supremacy, ultimately. This week, Representative Elijah Cummings died. Not going to talk about the man's legacy in Baltimore because we're not from Baltimore, don't know a whole lot about it. What I will say is that there is not a Democrat in Congress right now who is as left as I would like them to be. That's as much as I'm going to say about the man right now. What I will say, though, what we did have a serious problem with, and we were trying to be kind of respectful, because he wasn't even in the ground yet. I think he is now.
Yeah.
Or at least he's on the way, because he was lying in state.
He was lying in state, which was
at the U.S. Capitol.
I believe was the first time they held that for a black politician.
Right, I think, for a black politician.
Yeah, for a black politician.
But several luminaries spoke at his funeral. Two of those luminaries were Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Barack Obama said something that is a real problem. It was insulting. It was like an affront to me. It was like a personal insult to me when I heard him say it. He said, and several people I know shared it on their timelines, and it was all I could do not to comment on those people's stuff. I'm trying to get better at that, y'all. I really am. Baby steps. Barack Obama said of Representative Elijah Cummings in eulogizing him, that Cummings realized that you couldn't hate everyone you disagreed with if you wanted to get anything done. Or something like that. That was a loose paraphrase. But basically, the idea was, Cummings was nice to people that he disagreed with on policy. We're talking about a bunch of people who are all more rich than you and me and everybody watching right now, and everybody who is going to watch in the next week combined. These people have the luxury of sitting in a room, sitting in a chamber, being in a hearing or in a meeting and disagreeing with the words that make up a policy on paper, and being able to slap each other on the back, shake hands, and go to lunch after that. But you and me, when that policy gets written, The people who disagreed with Elijah Cummings on what should be in that policy were people who literally didn't care whether you or I lived or died. And for me, in this house, and I know for you, because you've said it, we have talked about this, we prefer James Baldwin's sentiment that we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression.
Right, exactly.
So for Barack Obama, first black president, the man who called our brothers and sisters rising up against police brutality and systemic racism in Baltimore after the death of Freddie Gray, the black man who was president, who got on TV and called our comrades and brothers and sisters thugs who were rising up for their liberation and freedom, the man who went to Howard University and told the graduating class of Howard University that nobody owes them anything, they don't have any more time for excuses, and they need to sympathize with white people to understand how white people feel and why they're mad. The first black president who goes to the graduating class of Morehouse and tells them to be responsible fathers. These are 400 young black men who had already done everything right, and he goes up there and tells them to be responsible fathers. This dude says that, again, telling black America to be nice to our oppressors, dismissing the ramifications of political disagreement on political issues. Because, see, everything is political in this country. For everybody, but especially for us. Especially for black people, especially for Native people, everything is political. So any politician who disagrees on policy that affects our lives, that's not just a disagreement, that's them being comfortable with oppressing me. And I don't have to be kind to them. I don't have to be kind to my oppressor. But that's what this man sat up there and said at Elijah Cummings' funeral in eulogizing that man. And I feel like it was just another way for Obama to tell black America, y'all be nice to white people, even if white people don't give a shit whether you live or die.
Well, I mean, that's always been his role. You know, I mean, he's one of many who has been tasked by the powers that be to keep a lid on our anger, to keep a lid on our dissent, to basically distract us away from just basically burning this motherfucker down. And so you know, that is that's the role that he plays. That's the role he continued to play. We've said before that the fact that all of us black folks, and I include me in that because I voted for him twice, all of us black folks who actually believed in his rhetoric of hope and change, we could tell that he didn't give a crap about us, because here it is, Trump is in his third year. He sat back and allowed Trump to overturn just about everything. Now, you know, everything that he claimed that he stood for. Now, you get on our airwaves during the 2016 election cycle, and you get on black radio at the last minute and then tell us that we're supposed to support, and that's over his overinflation of his own, overinflation of his own importance. By believing that he could just step in on the 12th hour and tell black folks vote for Hillary, and we'll do it.
Right, and not just vote for Hillary, but go tell Pookie and Ray Ray now.
Another, you know, and that's the black bourgeoisie. That's the way that they, you know, he's part of the black bourgeoisie that has contempt for us, always have contempt for black people. But again, he gets on our airwaves, and with this condescending tone, as you say, tell Pookie and Ray Ray, as if everybody has a Pookie and Ray Ray. And then he says, you know, if you want to protect my legacy, Negro, you've been out of sight for 3 years, not even fighting for your own legacy.
Right.
Now, we're supposed to protect your legacy, but yet here it is. Trump is rolling back everything that you put, even parking tickets that you had. Trump is making you pay for it, and you ain't even coming out saying, like, you know, hey, wait a minute now. They told me, you know, so he hasn't even protected his own legacy. And then all of the problems that he should have been visible about. I mean, damn, Jimmy Carter at least built houses. You know, Jimmy Carter built houses. Jimmy Carter was on the scene with the he took some heat when he wrote that book about the Palestinian-Israeli issue, and he took the side of the Palestinians. I mean, so Jimmy Carter, but this guy, you know, this guy has been invisible. He hasn't been around. He hasn't even, you now see all the black folks that made excuses for him. Well, you know, Obama couldn't do but so much because you know, because the government wouldn't let him, and plus they'll kill him. You know what I mean? So the thing of it is that
tickles
okay,
me every time.
so now he's not in government now.
Right.
So what was preventing him from promoting his My Brother's Keeper? What was preventing him from all of this things that he claimed he was about? Obama, to me, was the biggest fraud that ever stepped on this that ever presented himself to us. Look, let me tell you something. Whether it was Ronald Reagan, George Bush, we knew what we was getting with them.
Right.
We knew
right.
we knew what we was getting with Trump. We knew what we was getting with them. We knew what we would have got with a potential if Hillary Clinton would have won. We knew that. It would have been no surprise to us, no matter what they did. But this guy came and to me, he was even more dangerous, because here he is coming to us and telling us about our kids being thugs and stuff in Baltimore, while you running around here droning people left and right.
26,000 bombs in 1 year of his administration dropped, all by itself. 26,000 bombs. How is that possible? I haven't even calculated how many bombs you have to drop each day out of 365 days for that to. But we're the thugs though. But see, it's that kind of attitude that we're supposed to fall for, the symbolism of somebody like Obama telling us how to behave in the face of our oppression. We can't be angry at the people who are literally voting for our continued oppression. We can't be angry with them. That's just disagreement.
Yeah, but but this is the disconnect that the elites, even the black bourgeoisie and the rest of them, this is the disconnect they have with the streets. They don't know the streets. They don't know the streets. And so what happened is all of that stuff that Obama is talking about you know, that we should love our enemies and we should do this and that, that's not being played on the street. We are not listening to that, which is the reason why people are not pining for Obama, which is the reason why he's not being asked to speak anywhere in the black community.
Yep.
He is not being you see Obama going to events like this, but Obama's not being asked by any major black organization. He's not being asked by any major black religious institutions. They're not asking him to come and speak, because you know why? It's understood on the streets that he didn't give a damn about us then. He don't give a damn about us now. This man could be leading the fort. He's a community, was a so-called
community organizer.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, so even in this day and time when black people are facing so much, he could be on the forefront right now. I mean, Mitch McConnell can't stop him. You know, the white folks can kill him whether he's president or not president. So what's the point of not doing nothing, because they're going to kill you?
Right. I don't think he gets Secret Service protection now. So, I mean, you know.
But he does. Every president gets Secret Service.
They do for life? Okay.
Every former, But so yeah, and that's another thing. So, you know, he still gets Secret Service protection. So the point of it is that the only thing preventing him from coming out and living up to what he claimed that he's about is the fact that he never was about it in the first place.
And you know, that serves the gatekeepers of white supremacy. We told you this before. We will continue to tell you this. The gatekeepers of white supremacy can also be black. You see, people like Obama, the black bourgeoisie, they don't consider themselves white supremacists. They will be happy to call themselves capitalists. They're fine with calling themselves black capitalists. But tell me what capitalism is based on other than the idea of one group of people having to always be oppressed and exploited for the benefit and the profit that another people gets. And where did that come from? It came from the white supremacist foundation of this country, and much of the discovery, or really the plunder and the pillaging of what is now the developed world. That stuff is all tied in together. So they will call themselves black capitalists. They may even call themselves neoliberals. Even though we know that neoliberalism is dangerous, it kills people. It's the privatization of public services so that you and I have to pay for stuff that the government is supposed to pay for with our local taxes anyway. It is for reducing regulations on companies so the companies can make more money, but we don't get no more money.
Right.
You know, and it's for weakening the social safety net so that people are depending more and more on private charities, but the government doesn't take responsibility for providing for the general welfare of its people. That's neoliberalism, and it kills people, and it is what nations around the world, Ecuador, Chile, Haiti, Bolivia, Lebanon, it is what countries around the world are protesting against. Don't get it twisted. These people aren't protesting their particular government in power. No, they're protesting the neoliberal world order that installed those governments, usually by coup, U.S.-backed coup, or U.S. imperialist foreign policy and subterfuge. But ultimately, all of this policing of Black dissent, of the way we're treated, ultimately serves white supremacy. I mean, Barack Obama could endorse Justin Trudeau for PM for Canada, but he can't talk about any of the things that have gone on in regard to Black people and just policing, just that, in this country over the past year. Hasn't said a peep.
Well, one of the things that the Black bourgeoisie, most of them have in common, is their hatred for us.
Yep.
And that's the thing that we have to understand is that, and it's always been that from the talented temp, even W.B. Du Bois, who originally endorsed the talented temp, who was probably one of the architects of this philosophy of the talented temp. Even he turned against it because he found out that he's seen the harms in it.
Right.
And so he eventually turned. He eventually got away from that type of framework of having this Black elite that's supposed to represent the rest of us. He's seen how hostile. He's for two things. Du Bois seen that the elite were just out for themselves.
Right.
That's number one. He also seen that the hostility that they had toward Black people. You know, like I said, so he basically disses himself or changed his mind about that, and basically that wasn't he evolved to something else. But
he evolved to Pan-Africanism.
Right. But those who are the children of this talented temp, which includes Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, who could have advocated for the plight of Black women while she was in the White House, but she wanted for fat kids, and she advocated for fat kids, and now that she is a private citizen now, she write her book, but there's no advocacy on the conditions of Black women. Then here she is. She polls higher in likability than her husband, but she doesn't use that because again the Black bourgeoisie care less about what happens in the hood. They care less about what happens to the Black working underclass. So all they do, their role is to not only enrich themselves and to attach them and enrich themselves and promote this unjust capitalist system, but their role is also to keep us in check.
Exactly.
So that has always been their role. But again, as you said the other day, and then we're gonna have to wrap this up. As you said the other day, is the fact that their bag of tricks is becoming more and more ineffective when it comes to controlling the way that we on the streets operate.
Exactly. The problem for the Black bourgeoisie, which continues to demand that we vote for the Democratic Party because they're telling us that we should be terrified of Trump, the problem for them and the Democratic Party that they largely serve, there are a couple of Black Republicans who are part of the Black bourgeoisie, but 98% of them are Democrats. The problem that they have and the Democratic Party has is exactly what you said. Their spiel isn't working on us anymore. Their spiel isn't working. It's ineffective. Their efforts have done nothing but serve themselves, their backers, their corporate capitalist backers, and to embolden white supremacy, because this is what's going to happen with the Democratic Party. You've got people who are advocates, surrogates, superdelegates, telling the strongest, what should be the strongest base of the party, Black people, working people, Native people, other disenfranchised and oppressed people, to stand in line and behave yourselves and be nice to people who literally don't care whether you live or die, instead of corralling the energy and the anger and the organizing around the issues that matter to us,
right,
and making that the Democratic platform. Instead of doing that, you got this party that's going after impeachment, which again, like I said, not saying that he shouldn't be impeached. I'm just saying what we talked about at the top of the hour, this press conference about the special ops team killing Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. It may or may not have happened. He may or may not be dead. That's a whole nother argument that people are having, and you're free to have it. I will tell you this, though. This couldn't have come at a more opportune and perfect time for President Donald J. Trump, because now he has been able to shift the focus of the media paying attention to him and impeachment onto al-Baghdadi being captured or killed, and him fulfilling or appearing to fulfill actually what he said, that he what does he say? He destroyed ISIS. We know that's a lie, but still. So now he's got what he can call a victory, a win in his column. So he deflects from the narrative on impeachment for at least a couple of days. And then he also uses this as a very effective campaign talking point for 2020.
Right.
And the Democrats have nothing to counter it. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I know that those who are watching will say, well, there's Sanders. Let's be honest. Can we be honest about what's going to happen to Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primaries? They're not going to let that man win that primary. I know that people want that to happen, and it should happen, because Sanders, even though he is not as anti-imperialist and as far left as we would like him to be, Sanders is the only one who can push the Democratic Party back in the direction that it needs to go. And I think he's the only one who can capture the energy of down ballot statewide progressives to run in red states and capture Republican House and Republican Senate seats. I think Sanders is one of the only ones who can do that. But because the Democratic Party is so beholden, they are the other wing of the same evil white supremacist bird. They are not going to let Sanders have this nomination. And a part of the problem is...
We have to leave it here.
Okay, we started a little late. We did start a little late.
All right, but let's finish the point so we can end the show.
So part of the problem with challenging this white supremacist neoliberal issue in the Democratic Party is that we have a problem challenging even Sanders when he gets stuff wrong.
Right.
Like, okay, we're not going to talk about this whole thing about Benedict College, but there was a forum, presidential candidate forum at Benedict College and HBCU last week. Trump spoke there a few days before, and the administration just did some BS garbage and told the students to stay in their dorm, wouldn't let the students attend the Trump speech, but allowed the Trump campaign to bus in all of his supporters. So now the Democrats come, they have a forum on criminal justice. So a few of the students who they were allowed to attend this one asked a couple of questions of the candidates. Then again, Benedict College is an HBCU, black enrollment. One of the students gets up, a young man asks Sanders specifically, what would your advice be that for me the next time I get stopped by the police? Young woman gets up and asks the same kind of question of Biden, asked him, what would your advice be for me the next time I'm stopped by police? And I think they asked Kamala Harris the same question. Sanders' response, while I think it was kind of, it was not entirely accurate the way his comments were reported on Twitter, because a lot of people didn't post his entire comments. So I think that was kind of unfair. But part of what he said was absolutely problematic. Because I don't care what else you say. When you say, I want you, my advice to you, if you were my son, would be to, get the cop's name and stuff. And then respect what the cop is trying to do so that you don't get shot in the back of the head. That's a problem. I don't care who says it. That statement right there is a problem. There is no misconduct on the planet that justifies any cop shooting anybody in the back of the head. I don't care what it is you do. So that statement shouldn't come out of anybody's mouth. But when people challenged Sanders on the problems of that statement, Sanders supporters didn't like it. And I think we need to get away from being so protective of Bernie Sanders when he clearly doesn't get something right. Because the criticism isn't because we hate the man. The criticism is because we want him to get it right.
Right.
We want him to get this right. Then when you look at the other candidates' responses, Biden does kind of the opposite. He started out kind of right. He responded to the young lady, if you were my daughter, you'd be Caucasian and you wouldn't be stopped by the police. He was okay there. He was right. And he's like, look, that's not right. That's not right at all. This is a problem. Stop it. This is a problem. And then he goes off the rails talking about we need to bring back what we had, teachers and other professionals had back in my day, sensitivity training. Oh my God. So sensitivity training is not going to fix this problem. Although he started out right, acknowledging that the issue is not our behavior so that we don't get shot in the back of the head. The issue is the system.
The only thing that sensitivity training translates to is the fact that we have to teach cops to look at us as human beings. You know what I mean? That's sensitivity training. Sensitivity training is you just can't shoot them down. They're human beings like you. Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, what can sensitivity training, what else can it embody? That you have to teach the cops to look at me as their equal as far as humanity goes. That you can't treat me any different than anyone else because I am also a human being. That's what sensitivity training means in a nutshell. You have to look at the Negroes as humans too. You just can't shoot them down.
You just can't shoot them in the back of the head like that. And that's not the answer to a systemic issue. That was a BS answer from Joe Biden. The second part is and honestly, Kamala Harris's answer was so bad. You just gonna have to go look it up yourself. It was so bad it's not even worth mentioning. But there is a problem with white supremacy on the left when we can't even challenge the bad narratives coming from good politicians on issues of systemic racism that Black people, Native people, and poor and oppressed people deal with. That when we don't challenge those bad responses to these systemic issues, that helps white supremacy because we address address the problem.
Well, we're not. One of I think Vice Admiral Strawberry on YouTube said disarm the police. That's not happening. And see, and that's not going to happen. You're not going to disarm the police. You're not going to Oh no, well, I'm sorry, I stopped because our Aunt Clara is obviously watching,
Woo!
and she just sent something up. But anyway, and this is, and I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate, yes, we need to disarm the police, but we also have to deal in reality, and we have to also deal in the reality of the society which we live in. Disarming the police is not going to happen. This reducing the military, reducing the military budget, that can happen. But see, we can't even coalesce together around simple issues. So what I'm saying is that when we talk about white supremacy and we talk about the way that we're balkanized as the left, and so much that we're balkanized as the left. So I mean, so without having any type of effective organizing way of doing things, you can forget disarming the police. We have to really start to, and we have to firstly deal with the white supremacy strain that's in the left that convinces white people that they have to be in charge of all of this.
Right.
So
right.
Until we start to deal with that, those bigger issues, which I say I agree with, disarming the police. I mean, even in Pan-African circles, we talk about community control of the police.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain ways that we can do that, but let's be clear: the police is the domestic troops that protects the property of the elites, and they're there to keep the rest of us on our reservations. So that is something, dealing with the police apparatus. That is something that we just can't talk about lightly. This comes with strategy, and the fact if you want to disarm the police, that means many of us are going to die. And so that's the thing. Who's willing to put their bodies out there? Because we'll say these things, but then when it comes to let's get the troops together and let's go confront the police, some of us ain't going back home. Either through being incarcerated, or some of us just losing our lives. We on the left have not gotten to that point.
Right.
And so so until we get to that point where we accept the fact that I may leave out here and confront whatever, because we've seen that this government has no problem murdering you. So that once we convince ourselves that I can give all of this up, I can give up my job, I can give up whatever, and even my life eventually, and in order to change the system, because see, America will let you do some things, but the graveyards are full of people who tried to change the system. You know what I mean? And so they let you know that the graveyards are full of people who tried to change the system. So until we get to that point where we're willing to say that, well, okay, here's my will and my testament, here's this, here's that, because I may not come back. Or you and I, God forbid, but you and I could be sitting around eating lunch, and as with what happened to, I just heard this the other day, but what happened to an activist who was sitting there having coffee and got a bullet in the head. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when you become a big enough threat to these people, they don't have time. They're not in the business of wanting to negotiate. They're not in the business of wanting to talk. They're not in the business to want to reason. No, they just get rid of you. Right. So until we get to that point, and we're going to have to, some of us are going to have to get to that point, because they're not going to change the way they do business.
No. And they're certainly not going to change the way they do business by when we are talking to candidates who are supposed to be representing us, and their answer to a systemic political problem is to continue to tell us how we have to behave in this system of systemic racism and police brutality. We're not going to behave our way out of this. I understand the logic of, the individual person telling, their child, this is what you should do so you can make it home to fight the next day. But we're talking about politics now. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about what your parent tells you from, like the conversation I'm sure you've had with your son and your daughter to some extent. Mm-hmm. No, we're talking to a presidential candidate who, and this is the last point, who ought to understand, if they're so much better than every other candidate out there, that as a people, we are so oppressed and conditioned that we don't see the problems we face as political problems. Mm-hmm. We are conditioned to see everything we face as a result of our bad behavior. So that when we are in a space with politicians where we can ask about policy, what do? What's your advice to me for when I have this problem? But see, when white people who have all this medical debt get into the same space with politicians and they say, I got all this medical debt and I'm about to die and I can't pay this and I have to decide between food and insulin, politicians seem to be able to pivot on a dime and say, you know what, that's really terrible. Nobody should be living that way. And that's why I have a policy for XYZ, because this needs to be, because this is a political problem. It's not just you, it's not your fault. So this is the political solution. If politicians can do that with Medicare for all, student loan debt, $15 minimum wage, I don't understand why they can't do that when they're talking to a room full of black people about how do we survive encountering the police? Because that's a political problem. That wasn't a situation where that young college student was at home asking his father, even though he asked the question in a way that said, if I were your son. But again, we're not conditioned to frame our problems as political problems. So I really need for us to understand why when we're having these conversations, even with our favorite left-ish Democratic politicians, that we don't shy away from challenging them when they get the narrative wrong, when they get their answers wrong, and when their answers are insufficient about how to politically solve problems that black people face in our everyday lives. We can't afford to shy away from that, because not challenging those narratives feeds and supports and upholds white supremacy. And we ain't gonna do that no more with our lives. So that's our show.
Yep. So tell us what you think. Again, I would love to hear what you think. And we thank you for joining us. Again, visit our Patreon page if you like what you see. And this will be our new time spot, Sundays at 7. So please tell your friends, join us, click on the notifications so that you will get the notification when we stream. And check out Jackie on the Real News Network. Hey, look, we just like for you guys. We appreciate you guys coming on. I am sleepy. I am tired. I have to get up for work.
He does. So we're gonna leave you with Brewski, who is back there saying hi again. We love y'all. Thanks so much. As always, be really good to each other. And peace if you are willing to fight for it. Wait, which mouse am I using? I always get that messed up. Okay, there we go.